Hello, guys, welcome back to my channel When Humanity is Life. Let's start with part 3 of this chapter. I require one more video to complete this chapter. You can understand this chapter is huge, but don't worry, you will be able to do it. Now, we have completed with the portion dealing with divorce. Now we come to marital rights and obligation. What do you mean by marital rights? Now, those rights that arise because of marriage refers to marital rights, and not only rights but certain obligations or certain duties also arises when two persons are um, there in a marital relation. So we start with conjugal rights. Conjugal rights are those rights and privileges arising from marital relations, especially the mutual rights of companionship, aid, and sexual relationship. Now, the basis of the conjugal rights is consortium. You must have heard about this word consort, which means a spouse. Consortium means an association. Okay, as a husband or a wife, an alliance or a legal right of the spouse to have comradeship and support. Okay, comradeship means partnership. And parties also get the right of cohabitation. Cohabitation means the right which is conferred on the spouse. Um, they can they can dwell together in the same matrimonial house, and when two persons uh, you know lives in the same house, what is expected is a quintessence sexual relationship. Okay, they can engage in intercourse and they can have children. Now, not only does a marriage give the person's rights to be with each other, it also confers some responsibilities on the individuals. For instance, a man who marries, he takes an obligation to support his wife through his earnings. And this support is in consonance, is in proportion to his total income. It doesn't mean that a person with a salary of say 50,000, the wife can ask for a maintenance of 70,000 perhaps or more. That is beyond his capacity. Maintenance, if you don't know, after divorce, the wife who is divorced or even the husband in the case of Hindu marriage laws can claim money from the spouse who is better off. That sum of money is known as maintenance, and this amount of maintenance is decided with consonance with the total income. Okay, this obligation remains in force for the duration of marriage and sometimes even longer, even if the wife has an adequate income of her own. In Hindu law, the wife has an absolute right of claiming maintenance, and while assessing the amount of maintenance, as I said, the court will decide the financial position of the person who is required to pay the compensation and the liabilities of the husband if he is paying the maintenance. And in the case of matrimonial disputes, then the act provides that either the husband or the wife who has insufficient means can claim maintenance. Okay, and the maintenance can be claimed pendant light, or it can be in the form of permanent alimony. Pendant light means while pendency of the proceeding, when the divorce proceedings are initiated in the court, when the proceedings are going on, it requires a lot of expenses, the incidental expenses, lawyers' fees, counselors' fees, registering fees, all these things are the pendant light. Such expenses are given by the party who is better off, who has a better income. And permanent alimony refers to the sum of money that is given during the final disposal of the case. And in fixing the quantum of the permanent alimony, the court will determine what is just. Okay, they will consider what the husband will be able to pay, the wife's assets, the conduct of both the parties. All these things are kept in mind. So these are the two concepts of maintenance, the amount of money given and all. And this order will be enforced till the wife is chaste and unmarried. The wife will get maintenance until when she is unmarried and chaste. The Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act of 1936, it also recognizes the right of both the husband and wife to claim maintenance. And within the Parsi Marriage Act, both these concepts of pendant right and permanent alimony are there. Now, Muslim Woman Protection of Rights on Divorce Act of 1986, it governs the rights of the divorced Muslim woman upon divorce, and it also recognizes the husband, the Muslim husband who is divorced. If he fails to give the maintenance, then it's the wife's right to obtain divorce. That goes um, all about the Muslims' right to maintenance. And finally, we have the Indian Divorce Act, which governs maintenance rights among the Christians. The right of inheritance. You must be aware that when a person dies, his or her property is passed on to his offsprings. In this field, there are a lot of legal research going on for all these years, and it's a huge portion with a lot of laws and acts uh, dealing with property rights, inheritance rights, contract, and all. Let's start with the portion. Well, when a person dies without a will as an endorsement a person makes to declare who will be the owner of his or her property after the death of the person. After his or her death, the property devolves under the law of succession. Succession as in inheritance. The Hindu Succession Act of 1956, it defines a Hindu family, and it states that if a male or female dies, the property is distributed as per the rules established in this particular act. Now, what are the rules? There are three main points here. First of all, both the husband and the wife are included in the category of the most preferred heir. If the husband dies, the wife is the most preferred heir. She will get all the property, and if the wife dies, the husband is the most preferred heir. Then both the husband and the wife can make a separate will of his or her own properties and give them to anyone. But the ancestral property has to be disposed of according to the Hindu Succession Act of 1956. So his or her own property can be given to anyone by this will, but the ancestral property, which is passed to the husband in lieu of his inheritance from his or her ancestor, it has to be disposed of equally among the children according to this Hindu Succession Act of 1956. Okay, then if we come to the Muslim law, there is a restriction among the Muslim. What is it? A Muslim cannot dispose of more than one third of his or her property by a will. Hindus can, but the Muslims can't. And there are certain rules in Muslim law regarding the succession of property. First of all, in the case of the death of the wife, the husband's share is one fourth. You must memorize this portion. Okay, I have simplified everything in these boxes. You must be able to remember. So, if the wife dies, the husband's share is one fourth. When there is a son or the child of the son, you must be aware that in this community, the sons, they enjoy a lot of advantage, and the daughters are rather viewed differently. Now things are changing, obviously, and they will change, but yes, that's how it is, and the laws are still like that. So that's the first point. The husband's share is one fourth if there is a son or a child of the son, but if there is no children, then the husband's share is half of the total estate of the wife. But in the case of the husband's death, the wife's share is one eighth if there is a children. If there is children. And if there is no children, the wife can have one fourth of her husband's property. Okay, there is nothing to explain more in this area. I hope there will be no confusion. Matrimonial property, the property which relates to marriage. Now, property and gifts that are received at or about the time of the marriage belongs jointly to the husband and the wife, but there are certain properties which belongs exclusively to the woman. And in case of the Hindus, it's called stridhan under the Hindu law, and in the case of the Muslim law, it's called dower. Stridhan, any property or gifts given to the wife by her parents or in-laws belongs exclusively to her, and she can deal with it in any way she likes. The husband has no say in it. Similarly, dower, or the gift that a woman receives during marriage, it exclusively belongs to the Muslim wife. It is sum of money or a property from the husband in consideration for marriage. Consideration means something in return. It's an important aspect in contract law too. Remember this word, you will need it in class 12 too. And this door is a mark of respect for the wife that the husband shows. Done. We come to the next part, which is minor custody and guardianship. Let's do it. Now, the Indian Majority Act of 1875, it defines a minor as a person who has not completed the age of 18 years, who is below 18 years. And there are a number of laws that prescribes the marriageable age for girls and boys. The Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, the Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act of 1936, sorry, the Christian Marriage Act of 1872, it prescribes 18 years for girls and 21 years for boys as the minimum marriageable ages. In India, you must be aware that we had a history of child marriage. Okay, child marriage is a marriage that takes place before the girl reaches 18 years or the boy reaches 21 years. It's before the age of marriage those children are married off. When the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955 was drafted, it didn't affect the validity of child marriages because, you know, a lot of marriage at that point of time had taken place before the girl had reached 18 years, the boy had reached 21 years. If all of these marriages had to be declared void, then it would have been a chaos. The entire country would have went for a toss. So only minor penalties like 15 days simple imprisonment or fine was imposed on the voidable child marriages. Now, the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act of 2006. You can understand that child marriage is not at all a good practice. It often leads to an extremely vulnerable position for especially the woman. Even the men, I would say. Children are married off when they don't even understand the meaning of marriage, and it only leads to harm to both of them and to the society at large. They are not going to school, especially the women. They are pushed into the periphery of the society. They are becoming the poorest of the poor in some crucial respects. So this act was passed in 2006, which made child marriage voidable. Rigorous imprisonment for 2 years was imposed on any reported case of child marriage, and fine was also imposed, which may extend to up to 1 lakh. These measures were taken just to prevent child marriage. Now it's said that for a minor girl, the ages of the guardian is preemptory. What does it mean? This entire thing is explained by this concept. Earlier, there used to be a concept of guardianship by affinity. When women were married at a very young age, She used to completely merge into the family of her husband. Okay, and as a result, her responsibility passed to the family of the husband. Let's read. As I said, her responsibility merges with her husband's family, and she ceased to be a part of her father's family in all respects. It's almost like she has lost her identity, she became someone else. We can understand that many of the principles of gender justice are getting violated here, but that's how it was, and that's why the need for prohibiting child marriage arose. Now, the wife was completely under the control and guardianship of her husband and his family. If she was a minor, her husband was a natural guardian. This explains why the position of her guardian was preemptory. The husband was the natural guardian after marriage. And if the husband died, her responsibility passes on to his sapindas. Sapindas as in his relatives, his agnatic relations. And in case of the failure of his relatives to take her responsibility will pass once again to her father. And there are many instances where such woman, suppose after she has become a widow, she had to live in a very miserable state. Those instances are very prevalent, isn't it? Now, the Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act of 1956, it states that the husband is the natural guardian of the person and property of his minor wife. This provision is no longer relevant because now child marriage is absolutely banned, it's prohibited. And the Muslims. Now, the Muslims have no codified law about marriage and guardianship, and the marriageable age of both men and women is puberty, around 15 years of age. We have done it in the previous video. Now, marriage of a child who is below the age can take place, okay, but only with the consent of the guardian. Otherwise, such a marriage is going to be void, a batil marriage. And the husband is not entitled to the custody of the wife unless she attains puberty or such age in which she can consume the marriage, or in other words, when she can have the sexual relation with the husband, she can um no consume the marriage. So before that, if she cannot consume the marriage, the marriage is not valid. Thank you guys for being with me. Please read the chapter again and again, you will be able to gain a hold on it. And in the next video I will be completing the chapter. Don't worry, you are doing very well. Thank you.